Welcome to Bitcoin Stuff, the show where an insane person on YouTube controls all of Bitcoin through his YouTube channel. So this episode is called Rules for Cult Leaders. And we're talking about this because some people think that there have been cult leaders in Bitcoin, and some people think that this has become kind of a problem. We won't name any names, but, I think that we have had a problem with cult leaders in Bitcoin. So we are going to talk about rules for cult leaders, and this is just a way for everybody to get along more easily. If you go back and watch my episode on how to restore harmony, you notice that I gave some rules to Adam Back then. And he didn't follow my rules. And now, what's happened to Adam Back? His mind was destroyed by the Ring of Power. Now, nobody is saying you can't have cult members, but, I think that we need some ground rules for how to treat cult members. When you get a cult member, there needs to be some responsibility there. Really kind of like that you would have if you got a domestic animal. You wouldn't mistreat your pets, would you? You have to be responsible when you get a pet. So the same way, you need to be responsible with your cult members. And this episode is not for cult members. So if you are a cult member, I'm going to have to ask you to turn this episode off and forget that you have ever seen it now. Well, we're going to begin with another seemingly unrelated movie review, as we often do on Bitcoin Stuff, and the movie we're going to watch is Animal Crackers. This is a Marx Brothers movie, and it's my favorite Marx Brothers movie, and I think that you would enjoy this movie a lot. So maybe you just want to watch the movie now and come back to this video later. And if you are somebody from outside of Bitcoin who just stumbled onto this video for some reason, we have to go on the honor system here. But yes, this video is not for you either, so you are going to have to turn it off. And do I listen in on your secret Illuminati meetings? Now we begin with a song that is full of irony. There is a chief servant, and he is talking about an important man who is going to arrive. We do not learn who this man is. There are a couple of possible candidates.
You must do your best tonight. Be on your toes, men. There's an honored guest tonight. Is one of those men who are being plated by the smart head.
We'll see that he gets what he deserves.
We will give him just what he deserves. Now, what does that mean?
Treat him as they do a king, in manner royal, like a subject to a king. You must be loyal. On this object you must have your heart set.
We'll do nothing to get on his nerves.
Does it mean that they're going to do what the head servant said? Or does it mean they're going to do something completely different?
Again I mention, be on your toes, men. He craves attention. He's one of those men.
Yes, sir, we will give him just what he deserves.
We don't know who this man is who should be treated like a king. We very soon after meet two characters who this song could be about. And much of the drama of this film concerns their parallel narratives. The first of these men is Roscoe W. Chandler. He arrives at Mrs. Rittenhouse's rich socialite party, and he comes with very clear signs of social status. He has an important painting that he is going to unveil at her party. But what is it about Roscoe W. Chandler? Why can't he neg Mrs. Rittenhouse?
You are a very beautiful woman.
No, no, Mr. Chandler.
Well, maybe I'm wrong.
What?
Why does she reject him? She is treating him like he is a phony. It seems that he is perhaps not the man who must be treated like a king in manner royal. So who is? Captain Jeffrey T. Spaulding comes in, being carried by some apparent tribesmen who he perhaps has colonized himself and who have carried him back from Africa to this party. And then he sings a very strange song.
Hello? I must be going. I cannot stay. I came to say I must be going. I'm glad I came, but just the same I must be going. La la.
What is he saying? What is going on with this song?
For my sake, you must stay. If you should go away, you spoil this party. I am through.
I'll stay a week or two. I'll stay the summer through. But I am telling you, I must be going.
All he says is he has to go, and yet it seems like he's just a very obvious tramp.
One morning I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How he got in my pajamas, I don't know.
It seems like he can just talk nonsense to anybody.
And east is east and west is west. And if you take cranberries and stew them like applesauce, it tastes much more like prunes than rhubarb does.
And look, he can neg Mrs. Rittenhouse.
Mrs. Rittenhouse, ever since I met you, I've swept you off my feet.
She will let him neg her all day.
Something has been throbbing within me. Oh, it's been beating like the incessant tom-tom in the primitive jungle. Something that I must ask you.
What is it, Captain?
Would you wash out a pair of socks for me?
And that is a recurring theme that we see throughout the movie, is Groucho negging Mrs. Rittenhouse.
It is indeed a great honor to welcome you to my poor home.
Oh, it isn't so bad.
Needless to say,
Wait a minute, I think you're right. It is pretty bad. As a matter of fact, it's one of the frowsiest looking joints I've ever seen.
How does he get away with it?
Hey, hey!
What is it? What is it that Groucho has that they like so much?
Why, Captain.
Where did you get your wallpaper?
well,
You're letting
I-
this place run down, and what's the result? You're not getting the class of people that you used to. Why, you've got people here now that look like you.
Well, I think that Groucho is showing these people something.
One morning, I was sitting in front of the cabin smoking some meat when...
Smoking some meat?
Yes, there wasn't a cigar store in the neighborhood.
Maybe there's something genuine that Jeffrey T. Spaulding has that Roscoe W. Chandler does not have.
For my sake, you must stay. If you should go away, you spoil this party. I am through.
What is going on here? Well, if you follow my stuff, you know that I like stupid geniuses. People like Tom Bombadil and Don Quixote. The stupid genius is the person on which the world's choices hinge.
For my sake, you must stay. If you should go away, you spoil this party. I am through.
And he perhaps accomplishes amazing things, but he does not definitively reveal his intelligence. And the stupid genius is able to bring ambiguity out into the world. Because remember, Tom Bombadil said, it's okay if the orcs win. I'm okay either way. So he was ambiguous. And Don Quixote, well, he was crazy. Other people decided they liked to play along with his craziness. So, was he really crazy, or did he just have the greatest plan ever? And Groucho is a real stupid genius because he can lead people without revealing anything other than idiocy.
I must be away.
And he makes you wonder, what does he really know? And is he a con artist? Or is he a con artist with exactly the skills that we need? Well, if you remember my Narnia video, remember what I said in that. A king of Narnia, what does that mean? That means you remember that you come from the outside world. And you bring some of that outside world with you into Bitcoin. And what does that mean? It means that you know something about what makes Bitcoin valuable. And you have to keep hold of that. You have to remember that, or else you forget that you are a king of Narnia. And then you let other people make decisions for you, or you allow your emotions to control you. And then you become one of the monsters. So I think that Roscoe W. Chandler is someone who has been turned into one of the monsters. He's someone who is nothing but appearance. He has a nice suit, and he appears to be an acclaimed man, but he does not know what is really valuable. And we learn later that Roscoe W. Chandler is a phony. See, his check bounced. This is during a sequence in which Chico and Harpo, who are two other kings of Narnia, have tricked Roscoe into attempting to prove that he is genuine to them. And they have found that he's not genuine. Why is Jeffrey T. Spaulding the man who must be treated like a king in Manor Royal?
From the day of our arrival, we led an active life. The first morning saw us up at 6, breakfasted and back in bed at 7. This was our routine for the first 3 months. We finally got so we were back in bed at 6:30.
They can see that Groucho is a fun character.
Say, I was sitting in front of the cabin when I bagged 6 tigers.
Oh, Captain!
6 of the biggest
Captain, did you catch 6 tigers?
I bagged them. I bagged them to go away, but they hung around all afternoon. They were the most persistent tigers I've ever seen.
It doesn't matter if he talks nonsense all the time.
I'm for your old age, which will be here in a couple of weeks now, if I'm any judge of horseflesh. And now, madam, I feel that the time has come, the walrus
Captain
said,
Spaulding?
to speak of...
Captain Spaulding, you stand before me as one of the bravest men of all time.
They need him.
For my sake, you must stay. If you should go away, you spoil this party. I am through.
It may look like the party is valuable because of all the rich socialites, but it is really valuable only because of the people who understand the party. So he can get away with acting a little bit goofy. See, everyone at the party is anxious. People who don't understand Bitcoin as well are more anxious. So they have trouble being fun. He knows something that the other people depend on, and he can act like someone who isn't anxious. He knows what is really valuable. And he is able to communicate to other people at the party that he knows. He is a king of Narnia, without telling them what he knows. And he doesn't have to tell them what he knows. If you are successful as an investor, what that means is you knew something first, before other people. So you can't expect people to tell you what they know. He knows how to be interesting, because none of the other people are interesting. He knows how to create mystique. He can be interesting without doing anything else. He can just be interesting. And that is what is so interesting about him. So what is mystique? Mystique is an idea that grows. And his ability to create mystique is just what these other people are lacking. Groucho never proves that he is genuine. Groucho doesn't need money. If he were to prove something, it would destroy his mystique, because it would demonstrate that the other people have some kind of power over him. Groucho doesn't need to prove anything, because if you really threw him out of your party, he would just crash a different party. You need him at your party. And if he arrives, he treats you like the phony.
You're a contemptible cur.
And that's the only way you can have him. Oh, Groucho.
Please keep quiet, will you?
What are we going to do with you? Well, maybe we need somebody in Bitcoin who knows how to build mystique. Maybe we need somebody like Groucho in Bitcoin. And if there is anybody in Bitcoin who knows how to appear to know something without actually revealing any information, that would be Craig Wright.
We've got lots of mathematical papers coming out with lots and lots of squiggles that everyone will look at and go, oh, that's too complex, and go away.
So I think Craig Wright is a little bit like Groucho.
I begged them. I begged them to go away, but they hung around all afternoon.
Because I think Craig Wright sometimes talks a lot of nonsense.
Metcalfe's law, everything increases exponentially.
Now, Bitcoin's value is the network effect.
It's not that you know someone, it's you know someone who knows someone who knows someone. The old small world theory, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
And just acts like someone who is very confident.
Bitcoin is a blank slate. It is what we're going to start creating.
Someone who really knows what he's doing.
You can link my technobabble to something you can show to your 3-year-old and have them understand.
Even if there is something a little bit off about him.
I'm not going to be like everyone over there who wants to sell you a solution. I don't really care, because I'm here for the long term. I'm going to be here in 20, 30 years, and eventually I don't really care what you say. I'm going to be having the solutions you're using.
And now we'll continue with the I Must Be Going song.
I'll do anything you say. In fact, I'll even stay. But I must be going.
And look at that, he just contradicted himself, didn't he? That is a suspicious sign when somebody is giving you outright contradictions.
The first principle of Scientology is that it's only true if it is true for you.
That's a cult leader tactic.
I'll do anything you say. In fact, I'll even stay. But I must be going.
The idea is to produce two different emotional responses at the same time and hope the other person doesn't notice there's a logical problem. See, because he says,
I'll do anything you say. In fact, I'll even stay.
So he's flattering them. He's saying he's going to do whatever they want.
But I must be going.
You're not important enough for me. If there was somebody in Bitcoin who also likes to use social signaling to the point of parody, it would be Craig Wright.
I don't really care what you say. I'm going to be having the solutions you're using.
So yeah, so I think that Craig Wright is an example of a king of Narnia.
Hello? I must be going. I cannot stay. I came to say I must be going. I'm glad I came, but just the same, I must be going. La la.
So in this next scene...
You know, you two girls have everything. You're tall and short and slim and stout and blonde and brunette. And that's just the kind of a girl I crave. We three would make an ideal couple.
Now is Groucho making a joke?
Are we all going to get married?
All of us?
All of us.
But that's bigamy.
Yes, and it's big of me, too. It's big of all of us. Let's be big for a change.
Well, you know, when you think about it, if these women had been like, well, you know, yeah, I guess that sounds pretty cool, you know, he would have been like, well, yeah, that's That's because I have great ideas. So I think that that is Groucho's tactic here, is to be sort of ambiguous about whether he is serious. And if they happen to take him seriously, then he goes along with it. And this, of course, is a classic cult leader trick. Just throw a bunch of nonsense out there, and if anybody just is sort of taking it seriously, then you're like, yeah, that's a serious theory, you know, yeah. And that's kind of like what some people in Bitcoin are doing. And I think that Rick Falkvinier, and I hope I am pronouncing his name correctly, is doing the trick really well, because he's the CEO of Bitcoin Cash. And that's an imaginary office that he made up, and he started performing. So that's kind of a Don Quixote style trick, and I think he's doing a very good job. And another person doing something kind of like this in Bitcoin is Craig Wright, because he's sort of got this mystique going about whether he is the real Satoshi. So that's kind of like what Groucho is doing in this movie. When you're a king of Narnia, you can pull these kind of tricks. So you got to watch out for that in Bitcoin. Now later on in this scene, something really weird happens.
Are you suggesting companionate marriage?
Well, it's got its advantages. You could live with your folks, and I could live with your folks. And you could sell full of brushes. Living with your folks. Living with your folks, the beginning of the end. Drab dead yesterday, shutting out beautiful tomorrows. Hideous stumbling footsteps creaking along the misty corridors of time.
See, what was that? What's going on? Groucho just sort of like stopped talking to the other people, and he just started talking to the screen, and he did this weird Eugene O'Neill impression.
The gods look down and laugh. This would be a better world for children if the parents had to eat the spinach.
And what is he saying here? It sounds like a lot of nonsense. So, you know, when you start hearing somebody spouting nonsense, what you need to think is he trying to hypnotize me? You know.
Strange how the wind blows tonight. It has a thin, eerie voice that reminds me of poor old Marsden. How happy I could be with either of these two, if both of them just went away.
How happy could I be with either, were t'other dear charmer away. But while you thus tease me together, to neither a word will I say. But
in The Beggar's Opera, there is a man who has hypnotized two women, and he is saying, if only one of these two women would learn to regain their autonomy, then I would know which one was the better cult member. So Groucho is saying he wants both women to go away, and I think that means he just wants their money.
Well, what do you say, girls? What do you say? Will you marry me?
Now, what is going on in this scene, and what is Groucho telling us? Well, you know what I think. I think that this is a very profound scene, and I think Groucho is telling us that he controls everything, because he can stop the movie, right? Because it's not like he's talking to the two women anymore, is it? He's talking to the audience, and he uses the techniques of the cult leader on the audience. So he is trying to hypnotize you.
And in those corridors I see figures, strange figures, weird figures. Steel 186, Anaconda 74, American Can 138.
Now there is a dark side to being a king of Narnia, which is that you develop hypnosis powers. And remember, in my Narnia video at the end I talked about how you can choose what kind of monster you are. Well, that's what that means. You are someone who has good reasons to be calm when other people are anxious. Okay? Because if you understand something about reality and you understand something about what makes Bitcoin valuable, then you are going to feel more secure in the choices that you have made in Bitcoin, and you are going to be able to see other people acting anxious when you're not, and when that happens, you can hypnotize them.
Metcalfe's law, everything increases exponentially.
Remember before I just said Bitcoin's value is the network effect. That's because he confused me. He confused me into interpreting what he said rationally. But really,
if you think about real life, it's not that you know someone, it's you know someone who knows someone who knows someone. The old small world theory, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Was that a real thing he just said? I guess. I guess he knows what he's talking about.
Metcalfe's law, everything increases exponentially.
Wait a minute, now that's not Metcalfe's law, is it? See? He still gets to say it.
Everything increases exponentially.
Well, that certainly doesn't sound like Metcalfe's law at all, does it?
It is not what you think.
You know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like he is hypnotizing you.
Bitcoin is a blank slate. It is what we're going to start creating.
I'm going to give you another example of a hypnotic message from David Miscavige, leader of Scientology, just for reference. And this is from his introduction to Scientology TV.
L. Ron Hubbard, a true-to-life genius and an honest-to-God modern-day Renaissance man. But with all that, let's be clear. We're not here to preach to you.
Now, do you see what's going on here?
A true-to-life genius.
First, David Miscavige says L. Ron Hubbard was a genius.
An honest-to-God modern-day Renaissance man.
And I'm not going to preach to you.
We're not here to preach to you.
So, see, he preaches to you.
An honest-to-God.
And then he kind of interrupts the chain of thought, going, wait a minute, what is this about L. Ron Hubbard being the greatest genius ever?
We're not here to preach to you.
See, he interrupts that, and he says, I'm not preaching to you. Then you forget. You forget when he was preaching to you. Now compare that with this joke I showed you from Craig Wright earlier.
We've got lots of mathematical papers coming out with lots and lots of squiggles that everyone will look at and go, oh, that's too complex, and go away.
I think that there is an ironic style of Craig Wright's communication which is lacking in David Miscavige's. Because to me, David Miscavige really wants you to just forget that he preached to you just then. Whereas Craig Wright is sort of like,
oh, that's too complex, and go away.
Don't look at my papers. To me, that just makes me think he wants you to look at his papers. And
you can link my technobabble to something you can show to your 3-year-old and have them understand.
If you are a king of Narnia and you have never tried this cult leader tactic, well, I would say wait for an opportune moment. And that means a moment when you are not anxious and everybody else is anxious because they've made poor decisions and you have made sound decisions that allow you to be calm now. And if somebody acts like you need to prove that you know anything, just kind of act like you didn't notice, like you don't know that that's what they wanted. So remember, you want to put the message in the person's head somehow, in a way that hopefully they will forget where they heard it from. So maybe they think, it's their own idea, right? And then you just act like someone who is very confident, and that draws some attention when they're looking at you, when they're saying, hey, why is this guy so confident? Attract attention, and you insert the hypnotic message. Do you know that I secretly control everything that happens in Bitcoin? And then when people calm down, you just act like it never happened. See, because when people are anxious, then it's kind of easy to induce hypnosis. You just have to be the person who's not anxious. And then after the interlude, the scene continues, and you forget that it happened. And the interlude happens a few more times, and you get used to it. Pretty soon, he can give you a hypnotic message whenever he wants. And then he decides that he wants to hypnotize younger women instead. And that is the end of that scene. I don't think we can say there can't be cult leaders in Bitcoin, because, if you are a king of Narnia, then you have powers. So we can't just say, don't use them. But I think we can say use your powers responsibly, because you want Bitcoin to succeed. We all want Bitcoin to succeed. So, use your cult leader powers responsibly. So that is rule 1 for cult leaders. Anybody can have cult members. And to me, Groucho is sort of like a cult leader who kind of reveals the tricks of the cult leader in his humor. For a long time, I couldn't figure out, what is the point of Zeppo in these movies. What's interesting about him is his lack of anything interesting about him. So Zeppo is kind of like a background character who is in the foreground. And that's kind of like what a cult member is like to me. That's kind of a good metaphor. If you are a main character, then you are not a cult member. And Zeppo is one of the few exceptions. In this movie, Zeppo does a lot of things for Groucho. So he begins by hyping Groucho up before he shows up.
I represent the captain who insists on my informing you of these conditions under which he camps here. In one thing he is very strict. He wants his women young and fit, and as for men, he won't have any tramps here.
He thinks everything about Groucho is great. He is willing to let Groucho talk nonsense to him for a very long time.
In re yours of the 5th inst, yours to hand and beg to rep, brackets, that we have gone over the ground carefully, and we seem to believe, i.e., to wit, e.g., in lieu.
And of course there are many people around who don't want to do their own thinking, so maybe they're better off with a cult leader, However, anybody can be a main character if they want, okay? And main character, that means not a cult member. So cult leaders are main characters, but also people who don't want cult members are our main characters. So just for some examples, I think Ryan X. Charles is someone who has a really good idea about what makes Bitcoin valuable and who does not want to have cult members. And I think Rick Falkvinier is also someone who has a very good idea about what makes Bitcoin valuable and who doesn't want cult members. And that's rule 2. Anybody can be a main character. Now, one thing that you have to remember if you are a cult leader in Bitcoin is that it's really the main characters who are creating the most value. Okay, so maybe you like having cult members, but you have to use them responsibly for the good of Bitcoin. You can't make it a bad environment for main characters. So I think that there is a good lesson here from Animal Crackers as well, because I think that Zeppo is a very well-behaved cult member. And he looks like he is well-groomed, and he is polite, and he doesn't interfere with the other main characters. So there we have rule 3. Cult members must be well-behaved, like Zeppo. Now there's a scene in this movie that I like a lot where Groucho dictates a letter, and it is mostly nonsense.
Now read me the letter, Jamison.
Honorable Charles H. Hungadunga.
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 That's it, Hungadunga.
In care of Hungadunga, and McCormick.
You've left out a Hungadunga. You left out the main one, too. Thought you could slip one over on me, didn't you, eh? All right, leave it out and put in a windshield wiper instead. I tell you what you do, Jamison. I tell you what. Make it 3 windshield wipers and 1 Hungadunga. They won't all be there when the letter arrives anyhow.
Hungadunga, and McCormick.
And McCormick.
Gentleman, question mark.
Gentleman, question mark. Put it on the penultimate, not on the diphthonic. You want to brush up on your Greek, Jamison? Well, get a Greek and brush up on him.
In re yours of the 5th inst.
I see.
Now, you said a lot of things here that I didn't think were important, so I just omitted them.
Where?
Oh, Captain! Good gracious! Oh, my.
So, you've just omitted them, eh? You've just omitted the body of the letter, that's all. You've just left out the body of the letter, that's all. Yours not the reason why, Jamison.
Now, I thought that line was really interesting. Do you know what that means? It's from The Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson, a very high-level British Empire cult member. And the full verse is, "Forward the Light Brigade. Was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew someone had blundered. Theirs was not to make reply. Theirs was not to reason why. Theirs was what to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. So what this poem is saying is that the soldiers of the Light Brigade were not worried, even though were not unhappy, whether or not they realized that their commanding officer had made a mistake. And they had been trained not to think. They had been trained to take death as a matter of course. So I think that the British Empire was not being responsible with its cult members.
Yours not the reason why, Jamison.
That is definitely a bad sign when somebody expects you to prefer death to exercising oversight on whether something they're saying makes sense. That is the ultimate cult leader tactic. That is the final trick, is to make you think you must listen to my nonsense. A really important issue about being responsible with your cult members is sometimes cult members wake up and they want to be main characters. What do you think? Do you think Groucho is being responsible with his cult member here? What do you think would happen if Zeppo woke up from the Groucho cult? What is the rule that we use in Bitcoin to tell if you are being responsible with your cult members? Well, the basic rule is You have to be ready for your cult members to wake up. And the way you do this is if the cult member wakes up, you need to be able to say, I taught you a valuable lesson about being an independent thinker. So, congratulations. And so there's rule number 4. If a cult member wakes up, you must be able to tell him with a straight face that he learned a valuable lesson about independent thought from being your cult member. But if you can't, then to me it sounds like you are creating a bad environment in Bitcoin. So I think that if Zeppo were to start to wake up from the Groucho cult, and he were to say, you say a lot of stuff that just doesn't seem to make that much sense. So maybe I will go hang around people who make more sense now. And then Groucho could say, well, you know, I taught you a valuable lesson about how to be an independent thinker. See, because, you know, you were someone who was very easily taken advantage of, and I took you under my wing, and I didn't really lead you into the valley of death. And when you noticed my jokes about it, you learned to be less vulnerable.
You can link my technobabble to something you can show to your 3-year-old and have them understand.
I mean, hopefully he'd be able to get away with that. Now we'll go over the rules one more time, just to review. Rule 1, anybody can have cult members. Rule 2, anybody can be a main character. Rule 3, cult members must be well behaved, like Zeppo. If a cult member wakes up, you must be able to tell him with a straight face that he learned a valuable lesson about independent thought. And remember, be responsible with your cult members.
Bitcoin is a blank slate. It is what we're going to start creating.